and welcome to tutorial 1, tutorial 1A actually, setting up Logic Pro X for use in sound to picture work. So let's get started. The first thing that I want you to do is to open up Logic Pro X, and to do that you go down to the taskbar and click on the Logic Pro X icon, which looks like this. You may find that you don't have that icon on your taskbar. If so, click on Finder, select Applications, and there it is. It might be a good idea at this point to take this and drag it onto your taskbar for future use. I won't do that now because it's already there for me. So I'm just going to click on Logic Pro X. Okay, I'm going to close the Details tab down just in case it's not open for you so I can demonstrate that. So our focus is on the empty project. Live loops, we'll be doing stuff with that probably in year 3 in the spring term where we're doing some weird avant-garde stuff. But until then, our focus will be on this here, the empty project. And for those of you that don't have the Details tab open, just click on the little white triangle next to Details, and there you have it. So we can ignore all of this stuff. We can just leave it open. We don't have to untick anything, but tempo, key signature, we're not going to be looking at that, possibly ever. But we can just leave it be. It's not in anybody's way. Our focus is on the sample rate and the frame rate. The sample rate, the default is likely to be 44.1 kilohertz. And that's for digital music playback. That's the industry standard for digital music playback, which means if you're listening to a compact disc or a stream or however you kids listen to music these days, the playback sample rate for any of those will be 44.1 kilohertz. For sound to picture work and editing, the industry standard is 48. Now what does it mean? 44.1 kilohertz means you have the analog signal, for instance, my voice now. And this is being captured by a little capture app that I got from the App Store. And it's taking the analog signal, my voice, and converting it to binary code. And the sample rate dictates how many times per second the computer samples my voice and converts it into binary code. And so 44.1 stands for 41,100 times per second. The higher the number, the better the quality, the sound capture. So click on the little up and down arrows and select 48. Yeah, all Avids and edit suites all use 48 kilohertz. While we're about it, let me show you what the other numbers are for. 88.2, 96, 176.4 and 192. That's really high quality sound recording. And professional music studios will record at 192 when you're recording drums or bass or voice or whatever, because that's the closest in terms of quality to the quality you would get recording on magnetic tape at 30 IPS, which is inches per second. Ironically, magnetic tape, which came before digital recording, is actually better quality than standard digital recording. And so 192 is there to be as close to that as possible. It does use an awful lot of processing power, though. You have to have a really quite a sophisticated machine to run that on top of effects and things like that. But it's a moot point because we don't do that for sound to picture anyway, so we just select 48. The frame rate, and that's how the frame rate, the playback frame rate of a film. The default standard will be NTSC most likely, which is 2997, which is an American format. So we want to change that to 25 frames per second, which is PAL, which is the European format. So click on that and select 25 FPS. Don't worry about the surround format. We won't be doing much of the way of 5.1 because it's a bit old-fashioned, a bit agricultural, unless you're doing features, which by the way will be probably something like 20.1, or ironically, live sports events, which is 5.1, I can't see really any use for it. The immersive surround sound kind of work that we will be doing fairly soon, actually, will be binaural immersive surround sound, which works on headphones. And these days, people watch films on their tablets or on their phones with their little earbuds plugged in. And so that's where you want the surround sound. Also, binaural works as a stereo file, so it's easy to post online, whereas 5.1 uses either a 6-channel audio file or something called an AC3 file, and that needs bespoke software to work. And so we don't bother with it, frankly. I used to teach it, don't teach it anymore, teach binaural sound instead. Anyway, I digress, as you'll find that I often will in these tutorials. So, just to recap, empty project, sample rate 48, frame rate 25, and once you've done that, click choose. Okay, so our next window that we see is choose a track type. Now, there is certain information contained here which tells me that this version of Logic Pro X has not been set up with advanced tools. The reason I know that is because we have all these pretty little muggle icons instead of just buttons with the words on. And can you see here this little wood effect on each side? This tells me that it's essentially GarageBand with extras. Also, there is no snap function, no overlap function, and behind this, I would imagine there is only one tool type rather than two. Don't worry if you don't know what any of this means. I'm going to go through it now in a minute. So anyway, let's deal with the choose a track type. The software instrument, pardon me, there are plenty of what we call soft synths that are built into Logic, and if you plug in a USB keyboard, you can then play and record those sounds on the timeline. We will be doing a lot of this, predominantly using the EXS24 digital sampler that is contained within Logic. Connect a guitar or bass to your Mac and play and record through virtual amps and pedal effects. I think that's self-explanatory. The drummer is a kind of automatic drummer that will play along to whatever music track that you've created. I use it quite a lot for my music, actually. It's not bad, so long as you set it up properly. Again, well, we might be using this as long as I can find a way of substituting drum sounds with weird sounds of my choosing to create musique concrète patches and things like that. That could be quite fun. I'm going to have a little play with that over the summer to see whether I can come up with an interesting class for us. But focus, Reese, focus. We're doing setting up a template for sound to picture work. So what we want to choose is this one here, record using a microphone or line input or drag and drop audio files. And that is exactly what we're going to be doing. We're going to be dragging and dropping audio files in the form of library sound effects or sounds that we've recorded ourselves on location. We'll be using microphones in order to do Foley sound effects, live Foley effects. That will be another demonstration when it gets a bit cooler outside. All that kind of stuff. So we want this one. The number of tracks to create. I want you to select 4. Yeah. So to recap, choose a track type, audio, this little microphone icon, number of tracks to create 4. Don't worry about any of this stuff quite yet. This is more advanced stuff. The defaults all work, so we don't need to know this until we want to change it. But for now, we don't really need to worry about any of this stuff. So audio, 4 tracks, create. And here we have it. There you can see audio 1, audio 2, audio 3, and audio 4. And indeed, even though I'm not recording this voiceover using Logic, I'm using the app. Nevertheless, this mic's plugged into the sound card that is plugged into Logic, which is why we're getting a level signal, which is actually quite handy, so I know what kind of level that I'm recording at. Let's look at these icons. All of these are the same. So each input channel is exactly the same as the other, except, you know, they'll have different sounds on them on the timeline, but all the function buttons are the same. So this one here is the mute button. And what that does, it mutes that particular track. Let me highlight all of them and just select audio 1. There we go. So that's the mute. So when I press that down, it mutes this channel When I press this button, this is the solo button, and that will mute all the other channels except this one. So we can just hear that and mute all the others. This is handy if you've got some kind of sound or noise that you can't identify or locate easily because it's quite a complicated sound design with lots of different tracks. So you can just, solo each one until you find the track that has the unwanted dissonance or the noise on it. Here next is the record enable. This is essentially record pause mode. And this here is input monitoring, which allows us to hear the input signal without being in record mode. This is the volume playback. You see, it's now we will be doing a little session on the difference between level, which is the level or the record level that we record stuff with, and volume, which is the playback level, the stuff we play back with. So this is playback. This is volume. Yeah. And this is pan. And it is through the manipulation of pan and volume that allows us to play sounds within the diegetic frame at a specific point. So the sound mirrors the visual action on the screen. Okay. So you will be, and we can automate and record the movement. We can record and automate pretty much all the functions of Logic anyway, but we can actually fade up and fade down and record that so that when we play back, it automatically remembers those choices, those mixing choices that we've made. Okay, so I remember saying that the advanced tools had not been switched on because of this little wood effect here and here, and the fact that there is only one left click tool. When we switch advanced editing functions on, there will be a second one, which is a command click tool. So if we hit the command button, this button, I hold that down, it offers us a different tool. These are the various tools that we have, the pencil, eraser, text, go on and so on. We'll use the scissors a lot. We'll use the fade tool predominantly. And what we want really is the main left click tool, this one that is now there, being used as the pointer, because that's what we do most of, using this to drag and drop and all kinds of stuff. And then when we want to cut a file or we want to do an automatic fade in, we can press command, and that gives us the alternative tool which you can then use. As you can see, even though it's not labeled, if I press the command button, there we are. Let's see if the P&P and the on-screen will work. When I press the command button, that changes to a little cross. And it doesn't. Let me do it again. Oh, there we are. So I pressed the wrong button and I've just hit the microphone, so there's a big clump now. There we go, like so. So we don't have that. Also, we would expect to have a snap function and an overlap function. I forget actually what it's called, but it allows you to do crossfades and things like that. And we want those things. And so what we need to do first is switch advanced tools on. Once we've done it once, particularly if you're now working from your own version of Logic on your own laptop or workstation, once you've done it, you never have to redo it. Even if you don't use this template, it remembers. So go to Logic Pro, which is the top and left corner, click on it, go to Preferences, and then scroll down to Advanced Tools. I'll leave it there for a second for just to follow this. Do this now, please. Okay, and then click on it. And here we have it. And as I thought, show advanced tools is switched off. So just tick that little box. And look at the difference. Let me just show you the difference. See, Logic now thinks that you know what you're doing, that you're not some kind of GarageBand muggle that's having a little play, that you actually know how to operate Logic Pro X. And so all the pretty little icons have gone and replaced simply with letters representing. Let me switch it off again. You can see, all these little icons, all of this stuff disappears. Switch it back on, look up here, and there we go. Snap, drag, that's the word I was looking for, drag. So these have suddenly appeared, which we will need. and this alternative tool, which I tend to set at scissors, because usually in the initial stage I'm chopping samples up and putting them on different parts of the timeline. So like again, I press the command tool and we get the scissors function. Yeah, the command button, I should say. Okay, now going back to preferences, we have additional options. Now we want the audio and the advanced editing, the MIDI, and that's about it really. But I always enable all, switch them all on. Surround, that is predominantly 5.1. You don't need that clicked in for binaural, though I leave it switched on. The same is true with control surfaces. Unless you have a control surface, like a little USB mixer that looks like this, which you can get for about 70 quid on Amazon, or smaller ones, then you're not going to need control surfaces switched on. But they don't get in the way. And my thought is, better to have something that you don't need than need something that you don't have. So switch them all on, and once you've done that, click the little red cross in the top left-hand corner, and there we have it. Our little, look at the sides have gone here. These little wood effect sides have gone. We now have our buttons, we have our alternative tool, and we have our snap and drag facilities. Let me also bring your attention to these here. These are the resolution bars. This fattens, or it's a vertical zoom, so it makes these tracks bigger. It's very handy when you want to close them up and close them and open them up. And this is the zoom in, or the horizontal tool. So I'm zooming in because I want to be able to demonstrate bars and beats. Okay. Right. So we're getting there now. There's just a few more things that we need to do. First of all, I'd like to relabel these tracks. So I'm going to double click on the Audio 1 name, and I'm going to type in dialogue. Audio 2, I'm going to type in, what am I going to type in? Foley. Audio 3, I'm going to type in Atmos, which is short for atmosphere, which means environmental sounds, depending on the location, both interior and exterior. And Audio 4, I'm going to type in music, in brackets, diegetic. So that is music that exists within the interior narrative of the film. It's the music that the characters can hear, whereas non-diegetic music or mood music is stuff that only the audience can hear, the characters can't. And I will be adding, now typically we don't put that non-diegetic music into our designs. Typically that music gets put on in the edit suite, the picture edit suite, and is usually the director's choice. But I will be adding it to demonstrate a certain amount of functionality as part of this tutorial, and I'll do that a little bit later. Next, I want us to go here now. This is our, I forget what it's called, but it's where we see where we are, basically. And at the moment, it's set up using bars and beats. So that's bar 1, beat 1. If I click on this here, if I click here, it becomes bar 5, beat 1, bar 5, beat 3, beat 4, and so on. Really good for when we're doing music. Not so important for sound to picture work. Also, we know that we're at 120 beats per minute, which is standard rock time. So pop songs and rock songs tend to be 120, kind of 80s ballads tend to be between 80 and 95. Drum and bass tends to be 140 to 148. Also 110 would be disco. 120 would be kind of house. 120 to 130 would be kind of house music. 4/4 is the time signature. 4 beats to the bar. 1, 2, 3, 4. In fact, if I switch my click or my metronome on, this is a click track. It should play that, and doesn't. I know why, because it's not currently set to play back on a on my machine. It's only playing back on headphones right now, so you can't hear it. But by all means, click that and press play, and you should hear tick, 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 tick. And that allows us to play music, recording music, like obviously I'm playing guitar right now, in time to a click track, so that when you're then adding extra instruments, everything can be in time. And it allows you to do digital editing because everything will be on the beat. And this Logic Pro X is a music software platform. And that's why we have this grid system of bars and beats. So I'm going to switch that off because we really don't need the metronome. This is just the count in. So when you're recording something, you wanted to count in 1, 2, 3, 4 before actually recording. We don't need that. So anyway, going back to this, we don't need the bars and beats system. What we need is time code. So just click on the little arrow and select time. And there we have it. So if I press play now, we've got our time signature, our time code. So we know exactly where we are in the 5 to 10 minute film that we were doing post-production sound design for. These are, basically the same as a CD player. That goes back to the very beginning. Fast forward. At the moment, it seems to be fast forwarding in terms of bars. That's because there's no actual clip on here. And rewinding. This is record. So when you're in record pause mode, there we go. So actually, I'll do a bit of recording. I'll have the count in so you can see what it's like. I won't have the metronome. And I'm just going to press record. And there we go. And as you can see, my voice is currently being recorded. This is the graphological representation of the sound within the digital domain, which means, really, the bigger the squiggle, the louder the sound, as you can then see, or quieter. So anyway, I've not set any levels. I just wanted to show you that, and I'm going to press stop, and there it is. I'm going to delete that now. Okay. I'm also going to do something else that I'm not supposed to show you right now, or I didn't intend to, which is our bin or browser. So I click on there. I'm just checking that it didn't keep that file in the bin after I deleted it. So it's empty. So I can just close that down. I will be looking at that in more detail in the future tutorial. Okay, so we've got our dialogue, our Foley, our Atmos, and our music. We've got our time code. Let's go back to the beginning again. Good. We can switch that off. Right, so what I want to do next is look at Snap. The default will be Smart. And what that means is, actually, here we go. Let me undo delete. There we go, because I can use this to demonstrate, even though it seems that the actual track has disappeared. So look at the way I'm dragging this clip. Can you see how it just seems to judder? Let me just make it a bit, I'm just going to trim this down. And there we are. So it seems to judder. And that's because it's set to smart. It's not what we call a free drag. Yeah. So if I click on here, I can set it to bar, and it'll only move between bars. You can't move it any less. And again, this is great for music beats. So it'll go to each individual beat. There we are. And eventually, if you go down to samples, it's almost like having a free drag, because it moves it in very, very small increments on this system here, this timeline, I should say. Let's go back to smart. I don't really know what smart means, if I'm honest. It sort of anticipates what you're going to want. You could set it to samples, but the easiest thing is to just switch that baby off like so. And now we've got a free drag, no judder at all. This is important because this could be a footstep effect. And we've got our film here, or made bigger. Again, I'll be showing you how to do that. And we're going to want to be able to put the footstep, sound of the footstep, at exactly the point where the foot lands upon the surface. And if you have to jump between increments, you might not get it spot on. So it's important to switch the snap off. I can now delete this. Again, I'm going to check. There, look, see, it's there now. So I'm going to highlight that and delete it, because we do not want any files in our bin for our template. Okay, so snap is off. Drag, no overlap. Okay, let me undo and undo again. There we go. So here we go. Imagine we're in, let me put it onto Atmos. There we go. The film starts around here, fade up from black. And this is all we've got. The film lasts from, say, from here to, let's go from an actual start point, from here to about here. The problem is we've only, and it's a woodland glade. So we've only got this effect for the woodland glade, which lasts, let's make it a bit longer, this long. Yeah. So what we can do, if I go into my, there it is, it's the same, that's this effect, dialogue one, look, dialogue one. I can drag that, if it will let me. Here we go. Oh, it won't let me drag because there's no audio on it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to just splice this in half, like so. Okay, forget all of that. I'm making things even more difficult now. So here we go. We've got the same effect, and there's no overlap, so it just cuts. When we position it, it just cuts the length of the last one. So what we want is the ability to overlap the same sound effect, the beginning of the same sound effect over the end of the same sound effect, so to speak. And so drag, we switch to crossfade. That way it crossfades it, and that's a long crossfade. That's a very short crossfade. That's almost a cheat crossfade. And that allows the sound to be continuous throughout. So even if we haven't got a clip that's long enough to cover the entire scene, so long as we're not trying to crossfade between 3-second clips, which will just sound loopy and you'll get it recognizing it'll sound like a piece of music concrete. As long as we've got enough of the sound, like say 30 seconds, we can then crossfade and maintain that continuity throughout the film. So that's why it's important that this crossfade is present. So I'm going to delete those, hopefully now for the last time. Select, edit, delete. There we go. Like I said, we don't want that open. Okay, so to recap, dialogue, Foley, Atmos, music, diegetic. Advanced tools on. So we've got our Alt tool or our Command click tool. Again, press the Command button. There comes your scissors. Let me change it to Fade tool. There we go. Oh, actually, that doesn't. Let me show Glue tool. There we go. It'll only do it if there's a clip, I think. Never mind. Scissors will do it. I don't know why. There we go. Okay. So what I want to look at next is different colors. So for dialogue, I mean, when we record now, the default is always blue. And I think that the prettier the timeline, the better the sound design. I'm a bit synesthetic, but also I think it's symptomatic. Those people who spend time to get all of their different colors and different clips right tend to be better sound designers because they're more, they address details, and sound is all about detail. So let's actually preset. So all dialogue sounds will be recorded with using one particular color, Foley, Atmos, and music. And again, when you're dealing with quite big designs, it's quite handy to know what all your Foleys are one color, all your dialogues are another color. It helps you navigate through your timeline, particularly in time-sensitive projects. So go to View, select Show Colors. And then I'm going to select Dialogue, and I'm going to select a slightly darker blue there. Foley, I'm going to select this kind of rust color. You notice, by the way, that I'm choosing very muted colors. This is because all the bright primary colors give me a headache when I'm concentrating on my timeline, and I've got bright yellow or any of these. It just makes me headachy. So I want it to be easy on my eyes, so I will select different colors. So again, let me record a bit. In fact, I'll record on all, well, I'll do it individually actually. So record. So dialogue will be blue. Foley let's record, so I'm highlighting that one, will be that color. Atmos, click, record, pause. There we go. So dialogue will be that color, and music diegetic will be that color. Actually, that's the same, slightly different. I'll probably change that, but anyway, get rid of all of those because that's just for demonstration purposes. Delete for all. Just check that they're gone from there. Good. So I've set up the different colors. So nearly there. But I want to point out that this is the basic template. We will be adding to this. So for instance, in the next class, the next tutorial, I'll be looking at adding specific EQs, reverbs and compressors that are relevant to each sound type. So EQ for dialogue plus a compressor for dialogue, same with Foley, Atmos, and music, maybe music. Often that's all pre-EQ'd and pre-mastered, though I might need it as a special effect. All of the music in a film, in this particular film, might be seemingly coming from a 1920s horned gramophone, in which case we would need to add some noise and add some EQ to make a modern recording sound like a vintage recording. So there are always different presets, and we can anticipate, or we will know, that we're going to need more than one dialogue track, more than one Foley track, though I recommend that you do not create a new track for every time you do a new piece of Foley. I would just have them for individual scenes. Otherwise, you might end up with loads of Foley tracks. It's very hard to manage. But it is a pain creating a new track and then having to put the EQ in to match that one, and the compressor. It takes time. But fortunately, there is this little button here, which is new track with duplicate settings. So I need a new Foley track. So I can click this button, and that gives it my new Foley track. And all of the presets, all of the EQs will be contained in that, will be identical to that. As it says, creates a new track with duplicate settings. And we can have as many as we like. Whoop, whoop, whoop. I'm going to undo all of those now because I want to just have the one per each, though you might decide to have two per each should you wish. It's your template. As long as it's set up properly, I don't care how it looks. Everybody will evolve their timeline and their work desktop in Logic to work for what works for them. Everybody's individual. This is just a standardized starting point, and you will probably bespoke as you become more and more proficient as sound designers. You will start having things the way that you like them, and that's absolutely, I applaud and encourage that. But for now, let's all work from the same template. Okay, so there we go. So we have dialogue, Foley, Atmos, music. We've got advanced tools on. We've got our time code. We've got our two click tools. Our snap is switched off. Our drag is set to crossfade. And I think we're ready to save. And we're going to save in two ways. The first, what we're going to do, actually, I'm going to move that, click that back so it's at the very beginning. What we're going to do is we're going to save as a template. That's the first thing that we do. What that means is that it saves this template in a Logic folder that works for just this particular version of Logic on this particular machine. And so it's something to use, particularly if you're working from home or working on your own machine. By all means, save as template. So we'll do that first. So what we do, everybody ready? Yeah? Okay, so Logic, I beg your pardon, File, which is next to Logic Pro X. Click on File, go to Save as Template. Click on that. As you can see, I've practiced this, so I've already got a file here called STP 25 FPS 48 kilohertz. So I'm just going to click on that because I'll just rub over this. You won't have this, but I just want to demonstrate my file name, and I think file name should be as descriptive as possible. So STP is sound to picture, and it's just telling me that I've set it up for PAL, 25 FPS, 48 kilohertz. In fact, I'm just going to, I'll leave that as it is. And it's in the project templates window, which is part of the audio music apps, which is part of music, which is set on this machine. Yeah. And so I'm going to go save. It's going to ask me whether I want to replace the file, which I want to. It won't ask you that unless you've already done something the same. So I'm just going to replace. And up there, as we can see, the project's untitled, but the template is STP 25 FPS 48 kilohertz. Okay. So what I want to do now is an alternative save. And this is particularly good when you're working in Williams or in the computer center on one of the machines that has Logic installed, because it might not have that project template there because it'll be on a different machine. And so we're going to save it to a desktop. We have moving desktops in the Media Arts department, which means whichever Mac in Williams or the computer center that you log on to that has Logic installed, in fact, well, whichever one, regardless of whether Logic's installed or not, your desktop will follow you. So whatever you have on your desktop in one machine will be on your desktop on another machine. And there's quite a few machines in Williams and in the computer center that have Logic installed, and it could well be that you're working in there. So it's important that we save as a project file onto your desktop. So I'd like you to go to File, and I'd like you to go to Save As. At this point, I should point out to you that there are lots of shortcuts. So this would be Shift Control S to do a Save As. And I know you young folks love your shortcuts, so feel free to use all of those shortcuts as and when you feel it's appropriate. Because I'm old, I do like my menus. So I'm going to click on Save As. There we go. As you can see, the default is Logic. And we don't want to save in Logic, we want to save on our desktop. So click on if you don't have this, by the way, it looks like this. Click on this little button here and select Desktop. Yeah. Okay. So in the Save As window, I'm going to type in exactly the same thing. STP 25 FPS 48. And because this is a project file and not an actual template, I'm going to put template in brackets just to remind myself that's what it is. Okay, and then I want to organize my project as, I'm actually going to move away from desktop to demonstrate something. I'm just going to go to Reese Music to show you. There we are. Can you see this little thing here? Age of Rage, a bit of a lockdown song. And this is what a Logic Pro X project file icon looks like. Yeah. And I suggest we organize our projects as a package. Now, what that means is that all of the assets, the project assets that are in Logic, so everything that's on your timeline, everything that's on your bin, and also a certain amount of presets will be embedded into this project icon. If we were to save it as a folder, we would still get this Age of Rage, or whatever you've labeled it, icon, project icon, but you would also get one of these, a blue folder, which is with media next to it. And you'd be surprised, or maybe you wouldn't be, how easy it is for those two babies to get separated at birth. And so you open that and you have the dreaded missing media because the media file, you forgot to copy it onto your stick, or, stuff happens. So it's much easier to save as a package, knowing that everything that you need, all of the sounds that you've dragged onto the timeline or recorded, will all be embedded in that. And we can tell Logic what assets we want to embed into this icon, into this package. We will always want to save the audio file, so those must always be clicked. Sample audio data, we want that to be clicked as well, because like I said, we will be using the EXS24 digital sampler that's in Logic Pro X, and that allows us to take individual sounds and place them on individual keys on a keyboard. for instance, footsteps, allows us to trigger in synchronization footsteps whilst using the visual frame of the film as a reference. So we'll want that ticked. Forget about Alchemy audio data, Ultrabeat audio data, Space Designer impulse responses. We won't save that for now. Maybe we will be adding that when we get to the third year, because there will be a class in the spring term that looks at going to specific spaces, interior spaces, and capturing the acoustic properties of those spaces. This is very handy if you've recorded, if a film's been shot in a church and you want to be adding sound effects that appear to be in that church, then the easiest thing to do would be to record a designer impulse of the acoustic properties of that church, so that when you add dry sounds into it, you can add exactly the right kind of reverb for that scene, matching it exactly, helping the whole design process. And of course, because this is a sound to picture template, we will always want the movie file to be embedded in the project file. Once you've done that, you can click on Save. Does it already exist? Oh no, I'm in Reese Music, so I'm going to cancel that. I forgot to go back to desktop, which is bad. Going back to desktop. There we go. Once it's all done, click Save. And there we see STP 25 FPS 48 kilohertz template. And you can't see it at the minute because it's on the laptop part of this display. So I'm using an LED display to demonstrate this. So I have two screens basically, and it's on the other screen. But if you look at it now, you will see that it's the project file is on your desktop. If you close Logic Pro X down, there we go, and double click on your STP 25 FPS 48 kilohertz template. There it is. Up it pops, and it's all set exactly the way that you want it to be set. Okay, so endeth the first lesson. Thank you. Now go and have a cup of tea.